Bruxton, where we go back 100 years to our great grandma's kitchen. Now, she was cooking over a wood stove and we're not today, but we are going to do some of the same beautiful recipes. Today, let's make a bread recipe that's been in my family for generations upon generations. I'd also love to make with you an herb butter recipe with rosemary and thyme. I can't wait to get started in our farm kitchen together. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a busy mama. So the first thing I do is think about what's going to take me the longest. And the thing that's going to take the longest in this is rising the bread. And the next thing is waiting for your yeast to proof. So we're going to get started on our yeast. I already have 3/4 cup of warm water in my bowl. And to that, I'm going to add my yeast. And I'm also going to add a tablespoon of sugar. That looks about right. Now we're going to stir this up and let it rise. Make sure and get all your yeast off of the sides of the bowl. Every little piece of yeast is important. You may not know this, but if you have a jar of yeast, once you open it, you want to store it in the refrigerator. We're going to cover that and set it to the side. The next thing we'll do is put our flour mixture together. Let's start with 6 cups of flour. When I measure out a lot of flour, and many times I will double this recipe, so I'm measuring out 12 cups of flour. I'll show you how I do it, so in case I get interrupted or one of my kids have a question, I don't lose count, okay? I make little mounds in my bowl. Now you'll notice I'm scooping my flour, which is a little bit of a no-no, but see how I leave a little pocket at the top? It kind of allows for the fact that my flour is a little more packed and I don't want to over measure my flour. There's one mound, there's my second mound. I actually made this recipe earlier this week and I under measured my flour by a whole cup and I had to add it at the end. See my little pocket at the top? There's my 4th mound. Here's my 5th mound, and we need one more for 6 cups of flour. 6, just perfect. Now the next thing we'll add to that is 1 cup. We'll add 1 cup of powdered milk. Powdered milk is such a handy thing to have if you have children especially, or like to do a lot of baking. You can make a bowl of cereal in a hurry, even if you're out of milk. Next, we'll add a 1/2 cup of sugar, or what's remaining after we added it to our yeast. And let's give that a good stir. Now, if you decide that you don't like as sweet of a bread base, you sure don't have to put that sugar in there. I like it. Now, the next thing we'll do is we're going to just use our hands, or you can use a wooden spatula like I have, and we're going to make a hole right in the middle. Perfect. To that, we're going to add our yeast mixture. And then we're going to add an egg. Perfect. And we're going to add a 1/3 cup of oil. That's just lovely. I really hope that you love this recipe as much as I do. Now for this, I'm going to use a motion that you'll commonly see in pasta recipes, where we're going to start bringing the flour in from the sides. And we'll just gently turn the bowl as we bring the flour in. I like to give my bread a long rise. So this total recipe takes about 3 hours to make from the time you start getting everything out. Perfect. Once I feel like I've got everything pretty well mixed in with that portion, I'm going to make another well. I just want to make sure I've got egg and oil all mixed in with my flour really well before I add the water. This is such a tried and true yeast bread recipe, and if you'll follow these steps, it's really hard to go wrong. Okay, that looks really nice. So let's make another well in the center, and we're going to follow that same process. We're going to add 1.5 cups of room temperature water. Now when you're making yeast bread, you want to try to have every ingredient at room temperature. Your flour, your sugar, your water, your eggs, everything. Because yeast really likes warm, humid spaces to rise. And now we'll just fold it in from the edge, just like we did before. Some people use their hands for this. I like to use my wooden spatula for just about everything. I make cinnamon rolls for our farm here at Ozark Farms Market. And I have made this recipe, hundreds of times probably. And it's one of my favorites. Now this is a wet dough. I do like for my dough to be pretty wet. I think it makes for a moister dough on the other end. I like to add my flour on the counter. Some people like to add their flour in the bowl. I like to add it on the counter. This is a wet dough. We're going to leave it just like this. We're going to cover it and we're going to let it rise for 45 minutes. Once it's risen for 45 minutes, we're going to punch it down and we're going to let it rise again for another 45 minutes. And then I'll meet you right back here and I'm going to show you what to do next. I like to use just a pretty little cloth to put over my dough, and I put it in a warm place in my kitchen, usually by the stove. I'll see you soon. Now we've got our dough on the counter, we've got a floured surface underneath, and I've added a little bit of flour on top. Let's get ready to start kneading our dough. Sometimes when I'm taking it out of the pan, I'll go ahead and put a little oil on the outside and get it all ready to be nice and soft for our rolls. Everybody kneads their dough just a little differently, and I think it's so interesting to see different people's method for how that they do this. Ultimately, what you want to do is stretch the dough out and let the gluten form. This has already been kneaded several times in the pan, and that's really what we want to happen. This is a nice, soft, pliable dough, and it's going to make for some great yeast dinner rolls. That looks really nice. So what we'll do at this point is we're going to start breaking off pieces of this dough, and we're going to put it in our cast iron skillet. Now, this cast iron skillet is a nicely seasoned cast iron skillet. It doesn't necessarily need anything in it to keep it from sticking. If you have a high quality cast iron skillet, such as a large cast iron skillet like I do, you'll know that it's going to be a nice even heat. and you're not gonna have any problem with burned spots. Having said that, I really do like to put a little butter in my biscuits and in my rolls. So let's just use some of the butter that we're gonna use for our herb butter, and let's put it in this cast iron skillet. Now let's take some of this softened butter and we're just gonna smear it. That's a technical term, smear. We're gonna smear it all along the inside of our cast iron skillet. You can also use vegetable oil for this or canola oil. I prefer to use butter, of course. Get it all up on the sides, because remember, your rolls are really gonna rise. All in the corners, that's perfect. Okay, now we're gonna just start pinching off pieces, just like that, and we're gonna make some rolls. Now what we do is we take a piece like that, we fold it over itself, like that, like that, like that, and then we just take the bottom and twist it. Like that, until it makes a nice little ball. Now these will rise again. That sounds very prophetic. These will rise again. And so you don't want to make them too terribly big, because they might come over the sides of your pan, and that's not a good situation in your oven. Take it from the chief oven cleaner in the house. So this twisting at the bottom actually helps the rolls keep their shape, and that's why we do that. It makes them nice and tight. We're just going to continue on this way until our whole pan is full. I am so excited to make this old-timey herb butter recipe with you today. We've got some rosemary, we've got some thyme, and we've got some butter. Let's go. So the first thing you want to start with is some room temperature softened butter, not melted butter. You won't get very far with melted butter. So let's put this in our bowl, and we're going to use our hands, and we're going to use our trusty wooden spatula. Now you can put as much or as little rosemary and thyme as you'd like. When in doubt, you can just kind of use a sniff test. The way I take this off is just by using my fingernail, and I just go down the stem just like that. So you can just use whatever ratio you'd like. Now understand that this is pretty potent. So think about how much of that you'd like to bite into. Just take some of this off of the stem, just like that. So perfect. Be careful not to get any of the stem, and if you do, just take it back out. There's something so cool, I think, about taking something that just looks like it came right out of the forest. It smells so good, and you can grow this in your own garden. Did you know that? You can grow rosemary and thyme in your own garden or in your kitchen windowsill in your apartment, and then you can use it for things just like this in your own kitchen, just like our great-grandmas did 100 years ago. So I'm going to put a little more of this in, and then I'm going to put a little more of this in. And I think what I'll do with this is I think I'm going to break this up a little bit. So let's peel this off, and then let's just break it up, because these leaves are a little bigger. That's perfect. You can also chop this up with your knife if you'd like to. I prefer to just break it up with my fingers. Oh, that smells so delicious. Until I'm completely done taking this off of the stem, I like to leave it undisturbed so I can get a really good eye view of exactly how much herb to butter ratio I'm working with. This is looking really good. This is so good to use for things like on top of your steak. You can use it on top of savory breads like pita breads, yeast breads, even biscuits, pizzas. So many yummy uses for a nice homemade herb butter. You're going to be so proud of yourself when you take your first bite of this. Now, I think I'll put just a little more of this in. See how easily that comes off? Just so easily. You can just be really gentle with it. It just comes right off. Just perfect. There's just nothing quite like a quiet kitchen and an idea to make any day better. I think we're almost there. I'm going to put a little more of this in, and then I think we're going to start mixing. Now, if you're using salted butter, you won't need to put any salt in this. If you're using unsalted butter, remember you want to put 1/4 teaspoon of salt in per stick of butter. And we're going to do that. That looks perfect to me. Let's put in a little salt. One, two, three, just right. I'm going to use my wooden spatula. And we'll just start mixing this together in our bowl. And you know, if you decide that you need a little more greenery, you can always add it. But I think this is going to be perfect. Oh yeah, that's just right. The next step I think is so fun. We're going to put it in parchment paper and make it into a log. Let's do it together. Now you can store your butter out on the counter or in the refrigerator, whichever works best for you. If you want soft butter, leave it at room temperature. If you want cold butter, leave it in the fridge. Now we're just gonna pat it out. And we'll get it the approximate shape that we want it. And then we'll use our parchment paper to get it the rest of the way. That looks just about perfect. What we want to be thinking about is, how do I want to make slices when this is cold? It's all I could do not to lick my fingers and try this. Okay, let's roll this up. And now we're going to shape it. You can make it square, you can make it round, whatever works best for you is completely fine. Let's check and see how we're doing. That's looking really nice. That's going to look really nice once it's cold. Let's wrap this back up and put it in the fridge for 2 hours. See you soon. Now that we've got our fresh baked yeast rolls out of the oven and our herb butter is all ready to go, let's see how we did. Now be really careful because your pan is going to be really hot. Look at that delightful crispy bottom. Remember we put the butter in the bottom of our pan? Now you see why. These are so yummy. See how light and flaky those are? That's because we let it rise a long time. We'll use our fork, we'll stick it in, and we'll see all those gorgeous layers of dough. It smells so good. Now, let's take a little butter. Perfect. So delicious. So delicious. I hope you've enjoyed traveling back 100 years with me today to our great grandma's kitchen and return to home with Michele Broxton. If you need more information about these recipes, you can find it at returntohome.org or by emailing us at hello@ozarkfarms.org. I hope you'll join us next time as we delve all the way back into our old ways and these old farm kitchens and the feeling of togetherness that we get right here in Return to Home. See you soon.